No one can save you. Once upon a time, nestled in beautiful mountains, there was a rather special town. It was full of very polite, happy people who looked after each other and everything around them. In the morning, the birds sang merrily in the clear sky. In the evening, the sun sank low behind the mountains and cast everything in a pink glow. The town was also home to a number of very well-behaved cats, and the top cat of the town was called Clive. Clive lived in the big wooden townhouse in the middle of town. He occupied the top floor of his master's place, and like all the cats in the town, he wore special cat clothes. In fact, Clive was famous for his perfect taste, impeccable manners, and elegant wardrobe. His sleek fur was a mix of burnt orange, tangerine, and maple brown. He had a pure white bib of fur that ran from his chin all the way down his neck and over his belly. Each of his paws was patterned with white, which made it look like he was wearing socks. And the tip of his tail was white too. Clive was a short-haired cat and kept his whiskers straight and clean. He knew exactly the right colours to wear for any occasion. You could often see him pacing the townhouse in green tweed trousers and a jacket. On special occasions, he wore a black tailcoat with an emerald bow tie. He even had a fancy plum silk jacket with a paisley pattern which he wore for late-night entertaining. And that wasn't all. He also had beige walking trousers, green galoshes, an ebony walking stick, and a black top hat. But his most important outfit of all was his blue silk pyjamas. One morning, Clive woke up. He stretched out his paws, gave a great yawn, and was just starting to think about breakfast when there was a small ripping sound. Clive twitched his whiskers and looked down. His pyjamas had ripped. Embarrassed, he mewed for his assistant. Mr. Tibbles, a white fluffy cat wearing an orange waistcoat, came rushing in. His paws pitter-pattered on the hardwood floor. It didn't take long for Mr. Tibbles to understand what had happened. But there was a problem. Clive had no spare pyjamas. Climbing out of his ripped pyjamas, Clive thought to himself that it served him right. He should be careful to keep spare pairs of his clothes. Mr. Tibbles suggested that they buy some pyjamas from town for tonight. But Clive shook his head. He didn't wear just any old pair of pyjamas. Each element of the garment had its own special function to make sure he had the perfect night's sleep. First, it was always made from the silk of the sleepiest silkworm. The buttons always came from the Baron of Dreams and the thread from the Temple of Peace. Then it had to be custom-made for Clive. As Clive explained this to Mr. Tibbles, a wonderful thought came over him. What if he were to collect all the different parts of the pyjamas himself? He hadn't left the town in a while, and after all, he knew where to find everything. Yes, it would be a good little adventure for the day. With a flick of his tail, he told Mr. Tibbles to get ready quickly. Soon, Clive and Mr. Tibbles were outside the townhouse and trotting off down the road. Clive was wearing his beige travelling clothes, while Mr. Tibbles wore a hunting jacket. They hurried down the street, feeling the smooth cobblestones underneath their paws. There was a light breeze in the air that felt cool and welcoming on their whiskers. They went past the green grocers, the hat lady, the flower shop, and the jeweller's. They paused slightly at the butcher shop to smell the fresh sausage rolls. Then they found themselves at the tram stop. Right on time, a magnificent red and gold tram arrived. It pulled into the stop, and the two cats jumped nimbly onto the back and settled down for the ride. The tram snaked its way through town. From the back of the tram, the cats could see everything. Today, everything was peaceful. People were going about their shopping slowly and happily. The sun was shining, but the day was pleasant and cool. The tram turned the corner, and up ahead the cats could see the Great Hill. The Great Hill was the part of town that was built on the steep side of a mountain. Every day the tram pulled its passengers up and down the hill. The hill was usually where you could find the most interesting characters and unusual products. Right at the top was an observatory to look at the stars. This was where the Baron of Dreams lived. Slowly the tram chugged up the hill. Clive straightened his jacket and rearranged his ears. Finally, the tram stopped at the top right outside the observatory. The cats got off the tram and looked up at the building. It was small and round and built out of red bricks. The roof was curved like a dome, and a great brass telescope protruded out of it. Clive trotted towards the observatory. There was a big ivy plant growing up the side of it. Together, the cats began to climb. Mr. Tibbles was careful not to look down. Then they reached a tiny window near the top from me today, the domed roof, which was just big enough for a cat to enter. Clive knocked on the window with a series of complicated taps. Without a sound, the window swung inwards and the two cats climbed through. Clive landed lightly on the thick, fluffy carpet of a small room. Mr. Tibbles landed next to him and looked around. It was an interesting room, no bigger than a coat closet. The walls had been painted gold, and the ceiling was studded with small round beads of different coloured glass. When the sun hit the glass in the morning, it made the room come alive with colour. Behind them was the open window, and in front of them was a golden throne. Sitting on the throne was a very old, very skinny-looking cat. It was the Baron of Dreams. You see, cat dreams are different from human dreams. They are quite unruly, so you need a baron to keep cat dreams in line. The Baron purred happily to see Clive. It had been a long time since they had seen each other. Clive took out a very expensive tin of sardines from his jacket pocket and held them out for the Baron. The Baron's grey eyes lit up immediately. He slinkticked over to them, and Clive began to open the tin. Then the three cats sat together eating sardines and exchanging gossip about all the cats in town. Finally, when the last sardine had been gobbled, the Baron got up and moved over to his throne. He opened the bottom of it like a chest of drawers and rummaged around inside. Then he brought out a small drawstring bag and gave it to Clive. He explained that these were his best dream buttons, guaranteed to give mild and happy dreams to anyone who used them. Clive thanked the Baron and put the bag of buttons in his pocket. Then Clive and Mr. the Tipples climbed back out of the window, but this time they padded very carefully up the domed roof. When they reached the top, they took in a deep breath. All around them, stretching out in every direction, were the beautiful mountains. They could see the sun glinting off the snowy caps. Clive sniffed the fresh air and scanned the landscape with his eyes. And then he saw it, the small forest of emerald green trees. It was nestled at the foot of the closest mountain, and it was there that they needed to find the sleepiest silkworm for the highest quality silk. Ever prepared, Clive took out a package from his jacket and opened it out. It was a small parachute. Mr. Tibbles twitched his whiskers, but Clive told him not to worry. The parachute would easily carry them both. A few seconds later, they were poised and ready to jump with the parachute. Mr. Tibbles held one side, Clive the other. Clive took a steady breath in, and the two cats linked their tails together. Then they ran and jumped off the dome. Clive let them fall gracefully through the air, then flicked his paw. Mr. the Tibbles did the same, and the parachute opened out. Immediately it filled with air, and the cats found themselves peacefully floating. The mountains were magnificent. They seemed so huge, and the trees and shrubs that covered them swayed slightly in the breeze. The cats watched in amazed silence as they travelled over the wonderful landscape. Eventually, the parachute found its way to the small forest that Clive had pointed out. The trees here were thick, glossy pines. The cats floated gently down towards them. Then they reached the top of a huge pine tree. It tickled their paws, and they let go of the parachute to land perfectly in the top branches. But this wasn't just any tree. This was the silkworm tree. On every branch there hung a fat worm cocooned in a silky nest, and each one was busy spinning silk. The silkworms were all colours. There were magenta worms, green worms, pale yellow worms, and orange worms. Others were black, red or white. There were even silver and gold worms. The tree was so full of silkworms that it looked like someone had hung extra large Christmas lights, but Clive looked past all of them. His eyes rested on one particularly fat silkworm that hung next to the tree trunk. It was a pale blue colour, the colour of the morning sky, and it was asleep. The cats could hear its soft snoring. They had found the sleepiest silkworm. The cats skillfully slinked along the branches, weaving their way closer to the trunk until they reached the worm. When they got there, Clive cleared his throat. The worm woke up and looked at them with tired eyes. Clive reached into his pocket and brought out a packet of the finest quality ground coffee. The silkworm's eyes lit up. She quickly hurried inside her cocoon and returned with a neatly folded sheet of blue silk. Clive took the silk with many thank yous, and the silkworm happily took the coffee. Then the cats gave a polite bow and climbed carefully down the tree until they were on the forest floor. The soft, springy grass felt soothing against their paws. Mr. Tibbles was about to ask where they were going next when Clive told him to listen carefully. Mr. Tibbles did as he was told. He listened as hard as he could. Then he heard the sound of a babbling stream. Clive must have heard it too, because he gave a satisfied nod and began to slink towards it. Mr. Tibbles followed together. The cats padded through the forest, feeling the earth beneath them and taking in the scent of pine wood and fresh water. Then they reached the stream. It was only a little stream, but it moved quite fast. The water gurgled and tinkled over the smooth rocks. It caught the sun from time to time, making the whole stream glitter. Clive looked around until he found a plant with huge, wide, waxy leaves. He plucked 2 leaves from the plant and handed one to Mr. Tibbles. Then he placed his leaf into the stream so that it floated like a small boat. Mr. Tibbles did the same. Then they hopped onto their leaves and let the stream carry them. As they floated downstream, they watched the forest move by. It was so peaceful on the stream. The air was full of the fresh smell of water, and there was the soft sound of bird song. And every so often, a canopy of trees above them would open enough to let a beam of golden sunlight warm their fur. The stream curved and wound until it opened out onto a small grally beach. The leaf boats drifted to the shore where the cats got out, careful not to let the water touch their paws. There, at the top of the beach, was a temple made of smooth, round stones that had been piled up on top of each other. Clive and Mr. Tibbles stopped. This was an exceedingly peaceful place. There was something special about it. The cats made their way to the temple and went inside. It was even more peaceful in there. Clive explained that this was the Temple of Peace, and it was where they would find the thread to make his pyjamas. Just then, a very small, very beautiful owl appeared. She fluttered down from somewhere in the temple ceiling. Clive bowed, and she bowed back. In her beak, she held a thin silver thread that seemed to be attached to somewhere at the top of the temple. Clive made a low hooting sound at the owl, and she hooted back. They were discussing something. Then the owl clicked her beak and cooed softly. Suddenly a fleet of teeny tiny owls no bigger than a tennis ball appeared in the temple. They swooped all around the cats. With a smile, Clive took out his silkened buttons. The owls immediately got to work. Using special tape measures, they measured Clive. Then they cut the silk with their beaks. Other owls pulled more thread from the top of the temple and started to sew the pieces together. Clive stood with his arms stretched out. The owls took off his travelling clothes and started to arrange the pieces of pyjamas on his body and stitch them together. Mr. Tibbles watched, unsure of what to do. Clive laughed as the owls started doing the same for Mr. Tibbles. Soon, the cats were both standing in the most luxurious pairs of blue silk pyjamas. The owls fluttered around them, putting the finishing touches to the outfits. Finally, when the last of the Baron's buttons had been secured, the owls hooted and fluttered away. The cats relaxed. The silk felt so cool and comforting against their fur, and there was an inexplicable sense of sleepiness coming over them. Mr. Tibbles asked how they were going to get home, but Clive just yawned. They could worry about that later. Now it was time to take a cat nap. Mr. Tibbles didn't need to be told twice. He was already yawning and rubbing his ears with his paws. A great sense of calm had also come over Clive. He flattened his whiskers and stretched out his paws. He was so happy to have a new pair of pyjamas. Together, the cats curled up on the floor of the temple. They wound their tails around their bodies, crossed their paws, and relaxed their ears. They were so warm and comfortable, so relaxed and ready to sleep. They each took a deep breath in. Then they closed their eyes, feeling the weight of their eyelids and the heaviness in their bodies. Slowly they felt themselves letting go of their adventure. And then they drifted off into a deep and peaceful sleep. They would dream of floating leaf boats, snow-capped mountains, and the twinkling of the many stars in the night sky. And all the while, the Baron of Dreams would surely be watching.